Our ANC National Executive Member Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma has denounced the ANC's step-aside rule as unjust. Dlamini-Zuma is the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. She was speaking to us at the SABC last night.
On the question of step-aside, I think for me, where the problem lies is that the country's laws, the law of the land, says you are innocent until proved guilty, right? That's the law of the land. Then the law of the ANC almost says you are guilty until proved innocent. But even that step aside, the problem with it is that you step aside, you are charged. You step aside. 3 years on, you still haven't started, the trial hasn't started. What is that? What kind of justice is that? Because justice should be, they investigate you. Once they've charged you, the trial must start within months. So it's not justice when you can wait for years even before the trial starts. So why were you charged? What were you charged for? If 3 years on or 2 years on, you still haven't started the trial.
Well, Laminizumas was speaking to us following her nomination by a branch in eThekwini as a possible candidate for the ANC Presidency. Remember, she narrowly lost out to on the top post to Cyril Ramaphosa in 2017. To discuss, we're now joined by Director of Research at the Auwal Socio-Economic Research Institute, Angelo Fick. Thank you for being with us as always, Angelo. Let's start by assessing her comments. So she says that there is a problem. It could take years for someone to clear their name. That is true, but of course the problem the party is trying to deal with is that someone remains in leadership and then years later they are found guilty. What do you do if the wheels of justice do turn slowly in South Africa?
So one has to add some context to what Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma says in that interview, because some of these cases drag on not because the justice system and the Department of Justice and the prosecuting authorities are slow, but because those charged are constantly delaying and shifting their ability to account by challenging the process and its legality. And this goes up to the most senior figure in the party at the time, then President Jacob Zuma. So this idea that this is simply the fault of the state is not necessarily reflecting the accuracy of those who challenge the legal processes by endless desires to have those processes vacated. The second problem is, of course, also that the party itself has reputational damage that it has to consider. So it has had to measure the need to continue to call upon the electorate to support it with diminishing returns at elections in relation to direct perceptions of the party's implication in criminality and corruption by that electorate. And so this is not just as if people are being charged willy-nilly. This is a context in which there is a party fighting for its survival in terms of its perception as an organization in relation to ethics by the electorate. And this is a system in which, of course, she is now a member of a government that has been accused of under-resourcing the criminal justice system on very ordinary people's experiences of justice, whether these are women trying to get money as child support, whether these are survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence, or whether it is ordinary people trying to get their own names cleared because they've been wrongfully accused. So there should be no special treatment for members of the governing party.
So do you think that she recognizes that context and chooses to ignore it, or do you think she doesn't recognize it?
She's an astute politician, there is no doubt about that. She's also a very intelligent woman. So this is clearly a selection that all politicians in these kinds of campaigns make. They choose what they're going to foreground and what they're going to focus on. And in the case of Dr. Dlamini-Zuma, she's choosing to focus on the length of time that the process seems to take without actually clarifying which processes are slowed down by prosecuting authorities not finishing their work on time, and how much of that is the consequence of underfunding or under-resourcing, how much of that is the consequence of corruption in the police services, and how much of that is the consequence of those who are accused waylaying the process and delaying the process by their own challenges to their own being charged.
Yeah. Obviously, there's been lots of back and forth, Angelo, but do you think that the step-aside rule is helping in any shape or form to help the governing party restore its reputation? Thus far, do you think it's working?
So the test for whether or not the ANC's reputation goes down well with voters can only really be tested and can only really be shown at an election, and the by-elections so far do not bode well for the governing party. The second problem, of course, is also that this isn't just about whether or not people perceive the party to be overturning on this issue. It's also whether the party's own internal fight for control by the various factions or people who don't think of themselves as in a faction is going to be successful, because so much of what South Africans have experienced over the last 10 years has been the internal dynamic of the party spilling over into the state's ability to deliver what it should deliver constitutionally to its citizens. And for many South Africans, they're tired of being, as the phrase keeps going around, held hostage by the internal dynamics of the African National Congress, resulting in state failures on a massive scale. The power outages, the rolling blackouts, only the most recent and spectacular example of this. So Dr. Dlamini-Zuma may very well have a valid point that these things take long and the wheels of justice are slow. But she also has to recognize she's doing that in a state at this moment where the state itself and its ability to deliver is challenged, and the governing party that forms that state has its own internal challenges around ethics, around governance, and around control over power and its mechanisms.
Yeah, and citizens are frustrated. To make things more tricky, the president of the party does not face criminal charges, but some predicting that he may in connection with the Phala Phala farm scandal down the line. Do you think there's a chance that he could?
So whether or not the president ends up facing criminal charges or the sanction via the parliamentary process remains to be seen. But what certainly is absolutely necessary is that Mr. Ramaphosa should have had a ready explanation on the very day that Arthur Fraser walked into the Rosebank police station to lay those charges for why it is that he should not face these things. He should not have, should we say, delayed the process of being answerable on these issues. It should have been very clear, and as an astute politician, plausible deniability should certainly have been in place from as early as May onwards. So this idea that we should wait until there are criminal charges or the lack of criminal charges to make a decision does not, go down well with the citizenry that is tired of waiting. The president should have been able to explain his situation very, very clearly to the public the moment those charges were laid. The fact that it's taken all these months and that we still don't know whether there was money, whether there was malfeasance, whether there was misconduct through the Department of Justice with the neighboring government's requests, whether individuals of Namibian extraction or origin were indeed involved. These are all questions that should have been clarified months ago. The fact that they haven't fully been clarified and that we're awaiting a parliamentary process and after that some kind of investigation, this does not bode well for a party like the ANC, whose top leadership structure comprises of individuals who are either implicated in or somehow complicit with the very issues that the party says it wishes to rid the country of.
And surely neither does this claim. So let's return to what Dr. Dlamini-Zuma was saying. She said, I felt bad that I lost, and this was in relation to her loss to Cyril Ramaphosa last time. It is a contest, but of course, if you can go deeper into why we lost, you would probably find something different, but I will leave it at that. So again, are these hinting at claims of bribery or manipulation of branches that really have hung over all ANC elective conferences?
So if you go back to 2014 and 2015, there were already anxieties in the party around branch audits and about the numbers, the membership numbers for the party. The NGC, there was a difference between the late J.C. Duarte as Deputy Secretary General and the then President of the party, Jacob Zuma, about precisely whether or not the numbers had increased or decreased, which had been counted, which members, which branches. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, of course, as a member of the NEC, will have been present when the decision was made. And so in an organization that claims to have democratic centralism, and of which she has been a loyal cadre and member for so long, it's odd to now claim that this is somehow at odds with what the organization wants and that it should be done away with. A policy decision should be done away with in December. The second problem is, of course, also that whatever crisis the ANC is in, it has dragged the country into it. And so Dr. Dlamini-Zuma may well be playing internal ANC politics, but I suspect in doing so she risks damaging the organization for the upcoming 2024 election. And this is not good for a larger South African public, because there are other issues that ordinary South Africans are currently consumed with other than the ANC's internal fights and conflicts. And that is basic survivability in an economy that is tanking and bleeding jobs, and unemployment is a major issue. And this is also an organization where the two contestants, possibly more of them later in the year, vying for the top position in the party are all people over 60. In a country where the majority of people are 27 and younger. And so this kind of demographic imbalance is not something that is sustainable, either for the ANC or for South Africa in the longer term.
She said that hopefully young people would come through and women, so she was focusing on that as well. And I guess it's worth remembering that the race was pretty close last time. But my final question for you, given Ramaphosa's attempts to consolidate his authority within the party, if she went through as a candidate, what are her chances?
So again, this has to do with an organization that is in deep, deep financial trouble. We've heard from Pulemabe that they want the cap on donations for the party to be lifted, party funding mechanisms to be shifted slightly, because they need 50 million to run their conference at the end of the year. If you're a candidate in this party and you're running up against the billionaire, you might want to think about what your chances are for doing very well in that contestation. And so while I won't predict what it is that Dr. Dlamini-Zuma's fate is likely to be, it's more than just having specific branches and regions supporting you. In an organization in financial distress, the ability to raise and bring money to the party and to support those patronage networks that the party has built up over the last 28 years since it's come into government, that's an awfully hard ask, 5 months away, 4 months away, and now literally 3 months away from a conference.
All right, thank you for your analysis as always. Angelo Fick, Director of Research at the Auwal Socio-Economic Research Institute.